Hey everybody, and welcome back once again to the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast. This is episode 25. John and Wendy talk to Dave Ryan. I'm John.
And I'm Wendy. How are you this evening, John?
I am well. This is coming out right at the end of July.
Yep.
And it's going to be right after yet another edition of Disrupt that you're taking part of.
Yes.
I think it's actually yours, right?
Yes, it will be mine in Brookings. Super excited. Kate Bishop is coming. Gemma Toth. Very excited to have some SHRM bloggers there and some good friends. We are, it's too late for me to do my spiel for, hey, we need some money, sponsor us, but sponsor us for next year. That'd be great too.
Now, is this the first one in Brookings?
This is our second.
Oh, great. Good.
Yes. So we had our first one in 2017. We had 120 people show up, which was about 35 people more than we expected. And so we're hoping that we'll be breaking some records. So please, if you're not in the Brookings area, please watch us on Twitter. I will be tweeting fast and furious. That will be my only job, to welcome everybody, tweet, and enjoy some wine. That is my plan for the night.
Well, I know it's coming right afterwards, but I'm sure it will be a great one. We'll look forward to hearing more once it's over.
Yeah.
In the meantime, love you to introduce our guest, and we will get going.
Yes, so excited to have Dave Ryan joining us tonight. Now, Dave Gay sent us a very long, dry, boring bio and said, please don't read this. He gave us a much shorter version that he would prefer us to read, and I am very happy to oblige that. So Dave Ryan, he sits upright, he chews with his mouth shut, and he wears pants. Welcome to our show, Dave. And our first question is, what's in your glass?
I have no couth, so I'm drinking out of a bottle.
Oh, and there we go.
It is sparkling ice strawberry lemonade with zero sugar. My wife calls it chemical water.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But that's what I'm pounding down here this evening.
Dave, I think you have plenty of couth. I am drinking out of a can. It's a malted beverage, a Narragansett, which was originally out of Rhode Island, and now they're made in Rochester, New York. The union guys I used to deal with in Rhode Island love me because I drank local to them. That was still local. No, I would never say you're not couth at all.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, John.
So, I'm sorry for taking us off course there, but I'm curious, how did you get started in human resources as a career?
As I think a lot of people that come from a smaller business did, I kind of backed into it. I was doing some things at a company with the warehouse operations, and I was doing those reasonably well, according to the president of the company. Even though the company was not all that big, I think we had about 40 employees at the time. He saw the wisdom in kind of centralizing things under one person, one roof, if you will. We were making the transition from personnel to human resources at the time. So that kind of gives you an idea of, we did have electricity then, but fax machines were new. A lot of other things were not around. So credit to the guy I was working for, who's still around. I think a lot of people kind of do that in a smaller organization. They kind of move into that role. And then as the business grows, and the need becomes more and more important, that kind of comes under the one person's jurisdiction there. And today things are probably a lot more complicated. We didn't have I-9s back then, FMLA and all kinds of other things. So certainly things are a lot more challenging to deal with.
Well, and I'm sure you've seen a lot in your experience. We won't do numbers here, but I know you've been with your company for a long time. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the changes that you've seen. You talked about, I-9s have come up, FMLA. I certainly remember, I remember when we got a dot matrix printer, and we just thought that was the best thing ever. So talk a little bit more about the changes that you've seen in your industry, the food business, and how HR has evolved there.
Human resources has become much, much more regulatory driven, I think, in my opinion. A lot of HR departments feel that it's their job just basically to indemnify the company to try and keep them from being behind the eight ball when it comes to litigation. I think that is part of your job, but I think if that's the way that you approach it, you're going to be challenged to get good results all the time. I've seen so much change. The internet was not part of the workplace years ago.
Right.
And cell phones and all of the immediacy that we have today. FedEx. I was around before FedEx existed. A lot of these things have changed, and they've, really, really changed the way that business gets done today because of just the immediacy of everything, I think, is the big thing. And in the food business, in particular, we've seen a lot of voluntary standardization. The company I work for, we comply with a set of regulations that are international in scope, and we do that on a voluntary basis based upon what our customers ask for. But Walmart, ConAgra, some of the really, really large players have really taken the lead in setting standards that are global in nature. So if you want to do business with them, you have to be set up to meet the global standards. And, in terms of a big change, that is really something I've seen is just the sheer globalization. We were chatting before we went online here about, the international flavor of NextChat. And I think that's something really I've seen that's just huge, is that it's a much, much smaller world than it used to be.
That is true.
Dave, you've talked about technology and being around prior to fax machines, and I am curious, though, you tend to be what I would say is very ahead of the curve on many things, and I know for a fact you've been blogging for quite a while. Could you talk a little bit about when you started blogging and what was the impetus and kind of what have you learned along the way?
I looked at this subject before we spoke, and I started blogging because it was cool. It was a cool thing to do. All of the cool kids were doing it. So if you wanted to be one of the cool kids, you had to do it. From a more realistic perspective, I have an undergraduate degree in journalism. Writing and communicating in a written fashion like that is something that I, studied and done quite a bit of. I did some broadcasting work as a younger man too, on nights and weekends and stuff. I was kind of taken with that. I got on Twitter in 2009, and, I was kind of an early adopter. It wasn't too long after that I'd started my own site, but then John Jorgensen, who was the state director of Illinois SHRM, asked me, he said, hey, why don't you be the social media director for the State Council of Illinois? And kind of went down that path. Well, what am I supposed to do? Well, whatever you want to do. So I kind of had an open checkbook there. I got a lot of opportunities. And, the one thing that being involved with social media has really afforded me the opportunity to be around, to meet, and just become good friends with a lot of people that I probably would have not otherwise had access to or met or anything like that. As those opportunities continued to come, I thought this is very, very cool. I'm going to dive in even deeper and do more. I'm fascinated with technology and electronics and stuff like that. I did have another watershed moment too I like to talk about that, and I remember this. My oldest son was in college, and it was in November of 2009, and I was talking to him one day, and I said, hey, what are you doing? He said, I'm looking for a job on Facebook. And this is when MySpace was still around. So I said, oh, you mean you're looking on their website? And he said, no, old man, cop a clue, dude. I'm looking on Facebook for a job. People advertise on Facebook. And I thought, well, I'm one of those kind of people that is looking for people to hire. Ooh, maybe I should get on Facebook and get our company on Facebook if I want to engage some of these people that are his age. And so I started down that path with work and stuff at that point, and it's been very rewarding. It's been very interesting, and it's been you never know where it's going to go. So it's kind of fun and exciting.
That's true. So kind of along those same lines, did you have any issues getting your company on board with advertising on Facebook? I know because there are still places that struggle with advertising jobs on Facebook and looking for them. I mean, we put a lot of jobs in the newspapers, and sometimes I'm like, really? Newspaper? Are engineers really looking for jobs in the want ads? But I'm just, because since you were obviously an early adopter of that, did you have a lot of pushback?
No, not really. I mean, one of the things that was really good about Facebook when I first started using it, the metrics were just phenomenal. That you could see how many impressions that you had, how many click-throughs you had, and how many apps that you had. It was very easy to show that this was an effective way to get to people. So I never had a lot of pushback. And, fortunately, my boss he's similar to my age, but he was very accepting of technology and then the way that the world was going. So not a lot of pushback there, but I do remember what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. 2011, 2012, people were going to take Facebook away from them at work. We don't want them looking at Facebook.
Right. Yeah, spend too much time on Facebook.
And then they figured out they'd look on their phone,
Right.
So.
And my response back was always, they're going to find another way to waste time. You can take the Facebook away, but they're going to waste time in another way.
Well, I talk about being an old guy, but I don't know if you guys ever experienced somebody spending too much time on the phone at work.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's the same thing. It's just a different platform. That's all.
Right. Yeah.
It is. Ultimately, it's about productivity and output. Are you getting your job done or not? And
exactly.
If you can goof off on Facebook for 20 minutes a day and get away with that, well, God love you.
Oh, so we have to ask, where did the HR czar come from?
Back in right at the dawn of time when Twitter started, people were using these cutesy little names that they came up with, and I had been around our shop, had been called the HR czar for whatever reason. We have a union shop, and sometimes people didn't like the way that I dealt with things, and it was kind of a backhanded compliment, I guess, if you will, that, I ruled with an iron fist, but it was the benevolent dictator. So I thought, I'll just adopt that, and boy, it's stuck like glue.
I love it. I think it fits. It's awesome. Well, Dave, now it is time for everyone's favorite part of our show, the half-hour question connection. And our first question is always, do you remember how you first connected with us?
Twitter.
Yep.
And, I have to say, too, and I think you guys have experienced this, connecting with people on Twitter and then getting to actually know them. And, you can take it to Facebook or Instagram or what have you. But that time then when you first meet somebody face to face, isn't that marvelous?
Yes.
Indeed. Indeed.
I truly enjoy that. Yeah, that's just wonderful.
Dave, you introduced me to the Moscow Mule in DC last fall at BLS. And when I'm on the road, that's pretty much my drink of choice because it's pretty standard. You never know what you're going to get when you ask for a Chardonnay, but a Moscow Mule, that's become my drink of choice. So I have to thank you for that.
Was that one of those vats that Mike Shaw from Oklahoma had?
Yes.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah.
He did that a couple years ago. And those things, they put dry ice in them, so it looks like witch's brew.
Right. It was unlike anything I've ever had before. And it's one of those, I can just keep going back to this because it's pretty standard. Yeah, I think about that every once in a while. It's like, man, that was a gigantic drink.
Yeah, I believe those little pitchers or cauldrons cost $85 there at Fidelis. So, jump right in there. Well, I'm glad you think of me when you're traveling. That brings me comfort.
Dave, can you talk a little bit about how networking's helped in your career and what's been a really effective way for you to network?
I've networked a lot on Twitter, taken it onto Facebook. I go to a lot of conferences. I've spoken at a number of state SHRM conferences. I spoke at SHRM National in 2014. Probably going to look to do that a little more after I get done with my term as Illinois State Director. Just being out there in the space and talking to people is just a great way to meet people. I like to engage with people on Twitter. And, sometimes people, I'll call somebody if we're having an engaging conversation on Twitter, especially about something that they're interested in or I'm interested in. I still pick up the phone and call people routinely. I think old Steve Brown's got some algorithm that tells him when to call people, based upon their interactions or something. But I just, I don't know. I so enjoy meeting people and talking about what we do. It's just I don't know any strangers, and I think, by and large, every once in a while, I sat down next to some lady on the bus in Chicago and said, "Hi, I'm Dave Ryan from Illinois. Who are you?" And she looked at me like I was just, like I was a rapist or something. And
So, Dave, who do you read or follow for HR insights?
It varies. I follow a lot of the government stuff, the hashtags. In particular, I think I mentioned I had a union shop here, so the NLRB. My old buddy Mike Vandervoort works for an organization called Q. He sends out a newsletter, and it has labor stuff every day. And I'm not a member of his organization, Bad Dave, but I do get his newsletter, and I look at that. I like reading John Sumser, HR Examiner, the stuff that he does. I like looking at TLNT. I read Eric Meyer, and I don't remember he's a labor attorney, but he writes.
We're familiar, yes.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he writes good stuff. He doesn't write like an attorney. He writes like a real person.
Yes.
And John Hyman from Ohio. I don't know if you know him.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
I like reading. Yeah, I like reading a lot of his content. And then, other days I'll just kind of immerse myself in the stream and see what's out there. See what's going on. I like looking at the SHRM blog. The problem is SHRM blog is like Twitter. You just have to get in and out because Mary has cultivated so much content there that, you could make a career out of reading the blog.
Yes.
My old buddy Vandervoort doesn't write much anymore, but Mike used to put out some really, really interesting content. And then I do read some of the stuff I write at another site called Performance I Create. I read a lot of the content there that some of my peers put up there. Melissa Fairman and Chris Fields and Sarah Buzz on HR. Read her stuff. So, and whatever just happens to come my way, I think it's just kind of random. But the labor employment stuff I do hit hard there. And Eric and John are both really good sites to go to.
Oh, highly agree with those two. I love reading them.
Dave, how do you enjoy giving back to the HR community?
How do I enjoy that? The last couple of years, I've had the opportunity to, we've done student games in Illinois, and to just kind of try and reach out to the students and to befriend them. A couple of them I've seen over the years are now actually in working in HR. I've connected with a couple of them. I've helped them. They've gone to work for people I know. Donna Rogers, who I do some speaking with and stuff, she teaches human resources at the University of Illinois here in Springfield, reaching out and helping those kids. I like working with the younger folks. I'm kind of the old go-to guy here in my community. A lot of times people call me if they have an issue or something, especially when it comes to labor, since I've fought most of the fights there are to fight. So, and I'm willing and happy. I got a call from a guy one day. It was kind of interesting. I had some little nugget published in SHRM magazine. It was about running an HR department of one. And the guy just looked me up on LinkedIn and called me. He said, I figured if you'd give him a comment that you'd probably talk to me. And I said, I'll talk to anybody. If you give me a call, maybe not right now, but, can I call you back at 2 or something like that? So I just like I like talking to people, helping where I can. Just being a volunteer. And as I like to say about volunteers, all they want is your money, your time, and your resources.
That's all.
That's it.
Not much. Not much. Dave, what is your favorite movie?
Animal House.
You and Andrew Morton.
Yes.
I was listening to Andrew's podcast, and I heard that, and I thought, this is going to be a repeat. It's been such an iconic movie. I was at a hockey game, I don't know, a few years ago. It was Dallas playing St. Louis in Dallas, and St. Louis was beating up on Dallas. It was like 5-1, and they scored 3 goals like in 4 or 5 minutes. And right after they scored, it was 5-4. Then he put that bit up on the Jumbotron. Was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Hell no! And they got the crowd all jacked up with that. And then there's just some other classic ones. The Otis Knight. Do you mind if we dance with your dates? And I saw that with my sister in Arizona, and it was before I was married, and my young life, it was somewhat emblematic of my young life at that point. So,
oh my goodness.
Dave, how about your favorite musician or band?
Eagles. And I was devastated when Glenn Frey passed away. That was it was an untimely death. It was weird. I'd never seen him before, but I went to see Tom Petty that same year. We went on Mother's Day, and as a family saw Tom Petty, and he passed away later that year. So that was sad. But Eagles, by far and away, I have a little introduction I do. I've got a whole bunch of slides I go through, and I put these are my favorite beverages, and then I've got a picture of beer and coffee. This is my favorite band, and it's Hotel California. This is my favorite movie, and then this is the best book I've ever read. So I have that stuff's pretty much top of mind for me. Nice.
There's a really great documentary on the Eagles on Netflix.
I've seen
my
it.
husband and I watched. That was phenomenal.
Rather telling, but yeah. And then there was a tell-all book Don Felder wrote. He was the guitar player. The title is called Heaven and Hell. It's kind of about the Eagles, only from Mr. Felder's perspective.
Oh, wow. Interesting. A favorite TV show?
I struggled with this one, but I guess I kind of like I like Chicago Fire and Chicago Med. It relates to Chicago. I have a son that lives in Chicago, and some of the kids, I say kids, some of the young adults that he went to college with are now big shots on Chicago Fire set and show. So it's kind of neat to see that he's got access to that and stuff. So
yeah,
kind of watch that. And my wife thinks the two guys, Kelly, what was it? The two guys, the lieutenants, are very nice to look at.
Well, Dave, I typically try to find a connection there, and I have to say, with Animal House, I was just listening to a podcast earlier this week that Tim Matheson was on, and of course, Tim Matheson was Stratton in Animal House. The mind-blowing fact about him was he was also the voice of Johnny Quest, and that I can't wrap my head around that for some odd reason, because he was a very prolific child actor, but never a major star, and that guy has worked pretty much consistent since he was 12. Anyway, that was just a fun nugget, because they're so diametrically different.
They are, but there was a ton of people in that movie that.
Oh, sure, yes.
Yeah. Kevin Bacon and
Tom Hulse, and there were a lot of people. But the Johnny Quest connection just blew me away. That's one of my favorite cartoons. And so the fact that he was both just struck me odd. But it's when you're not listening to the Eagles, watching Animal House or the Chicago shows, what else do you like to do outside of work? Put away the HR things for the day.
Well, like tonight, I went for a bike ride. I rode 20 miles on my bike. I bike a lot. Try and do a couple big rides, a couple 100-mile rides every year. I referee ice hockey, youth hockey, high school hockey, men's league hockey. I used to like doing yard work. I still do yard work. I don't like it as much as I used to, but trying to keep the house not looking like somebody doesn't live here. So I think between those things, and I enjoy traveling and spending time with my family. That's about it.
Dave, if you were not in the HR profession, what do you think you'd be doing?
I don't have a witty and pithy answer for that question. I don't know. Probably something to do with technology, electronics, something along those lines. I don't know, computers. That stuff kind of trips my trigger. So I'd have probably ended up there, I guess, if I didn't end up in human resources.
Well, Dave, I want to congratulate you. You survived the connection, and you survived the conversation at large. You're also my friend now with Best Swag Ever. Really appreciate you joining us tonight and taking part in the conversation. This is your chance now, though, for the listeners. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I will connect with just about anybody on LinkedIn, but if you connect with me and you try and contact me and sell me something within 24 hours, I'm going to drop you.
Amen.
I'll connect with just about anybody except for scantily clad young women on Twitter. And there seems to be a preponderance of those these days. And, I usually, Facebook, if you've got enough Facebook friends that I know that, that are common, when you see one of those, somebody knows 126 people that well, it's probably in my world. So you can find me on Facebook. I believe my cell phone number's on my LinkedIn profile. So I'm not a hard guy to find. And my youngest son explained to me, since we talked about having done this stuff a long time, if you Google Dave Ryan and human resources, you'll find about 2 pages of me. So I've left a trail all over the internet. So
we will put that contact, not your phone number, but we'll put everything else in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, I've remained consistent. I'm Dave the HR Czar on Facebook. I'm Dave the HR Czar on Instagram. I'm Dave the HR Czar on Twitter. Even on I use an application called Strava, which is running and writing, and then I'm Dave the HR Czar on Strava. So
consistency is good.
That's right. Wendy, how about you?
Best way to get in touch with me, as always, is Twitter. I am Wendell93 there. I'll connect and chat with just about anybody on Twitter. You can also find me on my blog, mydailyjourney.com. Daily is D as in dog, AILEY. Also, happy to connect on LinkedIn. Just send me a note. Let me know how you found me or why you would like to connect. And always, the fourth Sunday of the month, you will find me on Twitter at 7 p.m. Eastern Time for the HR Social Hour Chat. How about you, John?
You can always find me on Twitter at John_Thurmond, THURMOND. Also, always happy to connect on LinkedIn. I always appreciate that personalized note. And I'm with Dave. If you sell me something soon, you're going to get cut real quick. But,
boom!
If you have a comment or a question about the show or chat, you can always send us an email. That's hrsocialhourpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook if you search HR Social Hour. You can find the show at hrsocialhourpodcast.podbean.com. We're also on iTunes, Podbean, Podchaser, hrpodcasters.com, Google Play, TuneIn, and Spotify. And as we always ask, if you like what you hear, rate and review. Helps us promote, get more visibility, and continue to build our community. Dave, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight, sir. For the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast, I'm John.
And I'm Wendy. And as always, be sure to connect,
give back, and network.
Take
care, everyone.
We'll see you soon.